Hey everybody, G4 Video 5 here, and welcome back to some more Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the definitive edition. In this part, we will be completing the Mount Chilliad challenge, which is a requirement to complete in order to get your percentage points for 100%. And the way this activity works is that there's going to be 3 races in which you must come in first place in. Ooh, doing that in first... My speciality. We're not being very subtle here. Ooh, what a poor start to this video. But either way, you have to do that 3 times. And in order to activate doing these races, you must get all racist by getting to the top of Mount Chilliad in between the hours of 700 to 1800 o'clock. And you also must have a minimum cycling skill of 40%. And so we've actually maxed out our cycling skill by using a bicycle to get between location to location when collecting the Los Santos spray tags. And so now we don't have to worry about these types of requirements ourselves, but still want to give the heads up for the one individual in this video's history that will be using this as some kind of guide of sorts. So anyway, this first race is called Scotch Bonnet Yellow Route. And, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of these races that we're doing here. I'd say the main reason is because I don't really like the bicycle in the definitive edition / any port after the original release, outside of PC, because I think the PC controls are fine. But the issue with the bicycle is that there's no in-between with how much you're accelerating. Like, normally you would kind of just ease into accelerating in some situations, but with this particular version of the game, whenever you tap the acceleration button, CJ just accelerates as quickly as he possibly can. And that's sometimes not the best thing in the world, because you don't always want to get this burst of speed, especially when you're in an awkward situation where you're trying to turn around a corner, but maybe you brake awkwardly, so you're kind of at a weird angle. And if you end up just getting this burst of acceleration, then you end up either crashing into one of these side barriers, or maybe you end up just kind of rolling off the side of the mountain, and there's all sorts of different things that can potentially happen. And so it's a little annoying to deal with at times. But on top of that, you also have these, I guess, invisible bumps in the ground, which makes sense that there would be bumps of some kind, since we're using this, or we're using this system of trails along Mount Chilliad as our racetrack, essentially. Like, it makes sense that you'd have a bit of a bumpy experience going along these pathways, but there's no indication of these invisible bumps that if you're going at full acceleration or accelerating while on the bump, there's a very good chance of you spinning out and potentially flying off the side of the mountain, which I suppose is not necessarily the absolute worst thing in the world. Because if you end up getting too far away from the racetrack, in quotation marks, then the game will just teleport you back onto the track. But by that point, the other competitors will have likely caught up to you, or they may have passed you up, so then you really gotta haul ass to catch up to them to pass them up once more. So it's a whole process with these races, and it's very annoying. So yeah, I'm not a fan. Apologies for the negativity there. But anyway, I will say something that does help out a little bit anyway with these invisible bumps that you could potentially come across is that when I'm going around turns and on certain straightaways, which I guess it didn't really help too much right there because I crashed into the barrier, but it wasn't too bad because the spin out kind of still set me on the right track. But anyway, something that kind of helps is coasting. And what coasting is making it to where you're not accelerating and you're just using your momentum to carry you around corners and whatnot. And it's a pretty useful strategy because, like I said, those invisible bumps can sneak up on you and potentially throw you off the side of the mountain. So by coasting, you're just kind of easing CJ over these bumps and easing CJ around corners to where it's less likely for him to spin out of control. And this right here, the Cobra Run, is what this is called. And the previous race, by the way, was called Bird's Eye Winder, which I don't know if that's referring to buttholes or something. You know, I don't keep up with the slang and all that type of stuff. But the Cobra Run is probably the worst race because of this opening sequence here. See right there? See that burst of acceleration? I didn't want that to happen, but it just kind of happened because the game has no in-between, like I said. So it's this one right here is where you really experience that in full force. And it's not exactly a great thing to be experiencing, let me tell you. But yeah, it's just, it's a real pain in the ass, that little sequence. I suppose you can collect those checkpoints that are on those wooden ramp/wooden pathways by just bunny hopping into the checkpoints if you're able to, but it's probably best just to try to stay onto those wooden planks and whatnot as best you can. So that's what I ended up doing, although it wasn't easy at times. And right here, speaking of things not being easy, see, I'm slowing down quite a bit, because if you can't really see where you're going, or if you have this uphill battle, see, I'm kind of swerving all around the place, it's best to slow down a little bit so you don't end up spinning out that way either. So anyway, thankfully there's only 3 competitors for this final race, and that takes us on home. So now we've completed these races, and I should point out, for the first race we ended up getting $500, for the second race $1,000, and for the third and final race we get $2,000. So that's a pretty nice chunk of change right there, in case we want to spend that money on something like ammo or weapons, since all of that stuff was taken away from us when we reached this part of the game. So anyway, that wraps up this part. In the next part, we'll be moving on to main storyline missions by doing the first mission for Caesar's cousin. Ooh, the suspense, which is called First Date. So until then, I will see you next time.